Okay, I've got about a page and a half resume here for Diane Wilson, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I'd rather hear her talk. But I will mention a couple things. She's a fourth generation shrimper and mother of 5, and she discovered Calhoun County, Texas, her home, was listed by the EPA as the most polluted county in the nation in 1989. She calls herself an accidental activist because she couldn't stand by to see what was happening to her beloved Gulf. And despite the fact that she got support from almost no one, she started pretty much a one-person battle, and after 5 years was able to get Formosa Plastics to stop dumping toxic wastes into the Lavaca Bay off the Gulf Coast. She explained to us that once she found out what she could do and how rewarding it was and how fulfilling, she just kind of can't turn down a cause. And she's been involved in many more since then. She's worked with the Bhopal victims. She founded Code Pink, which is a women's anti-war movement. She founded the Texas Jail Project, which works to correct the abuses in county jails. And as she says, there's a lot of people that talk about prisons, but county jails are all across the country and kind of forgotten. She's been arrested and jailed herself over 50 times. She's undertaken month-long hunger strikes. She's climbed chemical towers, and some of our people knew about her and kept talking about this person, and until I made this connection, I said, oh, that's who she is. She made national news a while back when she disrupted 2 hearings of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, and Tony Hayward and Senator Lisa Murkowski, when she doused herself with, shall we call it pseudo oil? You may have remembered some of those stories. She's an author of 4 books, including An Unreasonable Woman, True Story of Shrimpers, Politicos, Polluters, and the Fight for Sri-Diff, Texas. And her most recent book is Diary of an Eco-Outlaw, An Unreasonable Woman Breaks the Law for Mother Earth. She's won numerous environmental awards, but she says her favorite is from Mother Jones, who named her Hellraiser of the Month. So Diane, let's raise some hell in Fairfield.
All right, glad to be here. A matter of fact, I'm real delighted to be here. This is my first time in Iowa, and I certainly never expected to find this kind of town in Iowa. I did not, Iowa's kind of got a vanilla type name, and I swore I thought it was a vanilla type state, but I have totally changed my opinion about Iowa since coming to Fairfield. This is one town I would like to live in myself. Yes. This is, you really have something here. I think it's almost visionary. I come from a small county. Matter of fact, I was disappointed to find out y'all had the same amount of people we have. You know, it's about 16,000 people, and I was making our excuse because we was so little, and come to find out y'all that small too. So, but anyway, I wanted to first of all tell y'all I'm a 4th generation shrimper. I've been doing my activism for 22 years, but people still, when they say, well, how do you want to be introduced? I say, well, just call me a shrimper. And generally, people have no idea what a shrimper is. I know when I had a meeting with JFAN yesterday, I believe it was Alan told me, he said he knew one thing about shrimp, and I said, what's that? And he said, long time no see. You get that one? No sea, no water, no bay. It's a very low joke. Anyway, but I also wanted to tell you what the kind of results I get when I go to some places as a shrimper sometimes, because I've did a lot of hunger strikes. I've did 10 hunger strikes actually, and one time I was doing a hunger strike against DuPont, and I was trying to get them to recycle their waste stream, which you can do. You can do it, but you know, it's very difficult getting these corporations to listen to anything that's innovative or that it's reduces pollution. And so I did a hunger strike, and I went to Delaware, and I was sitting across the street from DuPont. And I have found out one thing: if you want to get something from a corporation, you get as close to their face as you can get. So I was sitting right across the street from DuPont, and I had been on this hunger strike for about a week, and I wasn't getting a single bit of publicity. Nobody knew I was there until finally a reporter came by, and he did a story about me being on hunger strike. And that evening, after the newspaper article came out, here come a carload of guys, and they said, "Where's that stripper on the hunger strike?" So unfortunately, I get confused for strippers a bit of the time. But anyway, I am from an extremely small town, 1,000 people. The only thing we're known for is Bonnie and Clyde, the Outlaw. Do y'all remember Bonnie and Clyde, the Outlaws? They used to hide out in my small town because we were so far back in the woods. But I'm the fourth generation of shrimpers, fishermen, and I'm one of the only women fishermen there are out there. There's a few that work on the back deck of boats, but not many are captains. And I've been a captain almost all of my life. I've been on a shrimp boat since I was 8 years old, and but predominantly, I guess people need to know right up front what makes a shrimper. High school education. I'm not well educated. High school education, why they will go to such extremes for their home. And for me, the bay was my home. It wasn't so much my house or my acreage or even my boat. My home was the water. And the reason why, and the thing of it is, when I was first asked by Diane, or rather Diane Rosenberg, to speak here, you know, she asked me what I really wanted to talk about. And I said, well, the thing I really wanted to talk about that often it doesn't get asked about is my motivation. And the thing is, I'm a bit of a mystic. And when I was 5 years old, I could go to the bay because all of the boats came in down at the docks, and the entire community was the water, just like the farms are your community, or the farmers markets, or where you bring in grain. I'm not sure how y'all do it, but for us it was the docks, and everybody went down to the docks. And I would go to the docks, and I would see that water, and I could see who she was, and it was an old woman. And I still remember how she looked. I remember she was this very old woman with long gray hair, and I remember her dress kind of flowed out with the tide. And I loved to go down there because this old woman was down there, and she really liked me to go down there. And so that was critical in my upbringing, to see the water as real and has an energy, and it was alive, and it was not a resource. And so when much later, fast forward about 40 years, and I had been a shrimper. I had 5 kids. I have 4 girls, one son who's autistic, and shrimping started really getting bad. We started having all of these algae blooms, and an algae bloom, what it looks like is like someone laid a velvet carpet all over the bays. I mean, all over the bays, and you cannot put a net into the water. If you put it in an algae bloom, it will sink. It will just saturate with this algae bloom. And so the shrimpers were having to leave earlier to go further out in the bay to try to escape this algae bloom. And then it was a pea green. It was the color of pea soup. And then we finally had a red algae bloom, and a red algae bloom, it has so much fumes coming off from it. If you were on your boat, it would make you sick. And then what started happening is all the dolphins started dying. We had 300-pound dolphins that you'd go out into the bay, and I remember going out in the bay on the boat, and you look out there and you'd see something that looked like this carpet that was smeared like maybe a quilt, and you get up closer and it was like this 300-pound dolphin that had disintegrated. And it was so bad I couldn't make a living shrimping, so I started running a fish house. And a fish house is where it's right on the docks. It's an old tin building, and the shrimpers who are still out there, they will come in and bring their catch in. And I would have fishermen that were in the head of the bay, and they said the alligators were just twisting in the bay. And then there were some fishermen that were catching redfish, and they said they could just reach down and pick it up. And they would bring it into me, and they would said, "What is going on with these fish? Why are all the dolphins dying out there?" And the thing of it is that in the United States, you could be totally surrounded by these corporations. And these were huge multinational chemical corporations. They were like Union Carbide, it was like BP Chemical, it was Alcoa Aluminum, it was Formosa Plastics, it was DuPont, it was major players, and they totally surrounded a little 16,000 population where most of them were fishermen, and then we also had some cotton and rice farmers out there. And you did not know one single thing, what they were emitting in the air, what they were dumping into the bay, because every single one of them, they get rid of their waste by dumping it into the estuaries. They're considered the cradles of all of your species, your marine species growing. These are the cradles, and they had permits, and they were dumping right in our estuaries. But you couldn't ask a single question, and it wasn't until 1989. It was the first time the toxic release inventory came out, and the toxic release inventory was passed by Congress because Union Carbide had been in India with an experimental plant, an experimental pesticide plant in the city of Bhopal, 500,000 people, and it wasn't making any money. So what do? What does a corporation do when they're not making money? They start cutting stuff. They start cutting safety. They start cutting refrigeration. They start cutting their workers, their guards. And so what happened? It was the most unbelievable. It's things they call worst case scenarios, but they say never in 1,000 years. This is never going to happen. Well, it happened in Bhopal, India, and it had this runaway action, and this pesticide spewed out into this very close community that was sleeping in December 1984, and there's a lot of debate about how many people died, but it's anywhere between 3,000 to 8,000 people that first night dead. That's how many people died. Little children, old grandmothers, the cows, the women, the men, everything. There were so many people that died, and that they were, I guess they were putting the bodies into the rivers. There were log jams of bodies out there. And that is why the United States, our government, said, we are going to let the people of this country know what is going on next door to them. So they passed the TRI data. And that was the first time, and I was surrounded by about 6 major multinational corporations. That was the first time I heard the first thing about, and I had been there my whole life. My family had been there 100 years. That's the first time I ever heard the first thing about the toxins coming out of there. And it come to find out is my county, 15,000 people at that time, 15,000 people, mainly fishermen except for the chemical plants, and we were #1 in the nation. And not only that, we had half the waste generated in Texas right there in my county. And so, you know, and I am, I know Mother Jones called me a hellraiser, and a lot of people, you know, they get real nervous when they see me. They really do. I've had people, they see me coming, they will shut their cafe door. They will shut it. People will go on the other side of the road. I've seen literally plant managers just jump out of their skin when they see me coming. But I'm actually an extremely, but really, I am extremely mild. I'm really congenial type person. And the thing was, but when I saw we were #1, I mean, I would do what anybody would do. I would do what you would do. You would like, #1? And so what did I do? I walked down City Hall, Shell Road, walked down there, and I said, I want to have a meeting about this, this pollution. And that's all I did. I just requested a meeting. And what happened? I had the biggest backlash you cannot imagine. Within 2 days, I had the president of the bank come down to see me. I never saw that man a day in my life. I had never spoken to him. I didn't know what his name was. I knew him on sight. And he come down to the fish house in his 3-piece suit, in his fancy little sedan car, and he got out and come to the fish house, which is a very stinky place, so you don't often see those type folks there. And he said, now, Diane, are you fixing to start a vigilante group to roast industry alive? And I'm like, I had no idea what the man was talking about. I really, really didn't. I was very, very naive, very stupid. And I just had I said, no, I'm not fixing, I'm just calling a meeting. And he said, well, can industry come? And I'm like, why, sure, just tell them, come on, I don't care. And then pretty soon, I had the city secretary was sitting down by the mayor, and she said, Diane, please just cancel this meeting. Just cancel this meeting. Just move it out. And then the economic development, they went to my brothers. I got brothers who were shrimpers, and they said, tell your sister to stop what she is doing. Tell her to be a good citizen and stop it. And I hadn't even had the meeting yet. And before it was over with, the senator sent his aide, the plant manager, a few plant managers came down there, and the county commissioner came down there, and it was like, Diane, won't you just quit doing this? And, you know, and like I said, I'm pretty congenial, but I was like, I had the meeting anyway. But what, you know, to tell you about, you know, you think people can be really bad? I mean, how bad can it be when you're #1 in the nation, and then you think you can't get any worse than that, but no, why they were so upset is because not only we were #1, not only did we had a Mercury Superfund site in our bay that the shrimpers were shrimping right on top of, not only that, but we were getting the biggest chemical expansion Texas had ever had. It was the biggest in the United States in 10 years. And guess who it was? It was such a bad polluter, they were kicked out of Taiwan, and they come straight to Texas. And matter of fact, they were trying to see is, now, where are we going to go to, Texas or Louisiana? It's like, which one was going to give us the most money? And Texas gave them $250 million in tax abatement just to get themselves down there and put their little discharge right in our bay. And the thing of it is not one single solitary question on the environment. They didn't say, hey, are you a polluter? You got a problem with pollution? No. I mean, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Highways, the Attorney General's office, the governor of the state of Texas, nobody, not an environmental agency, said one word. They just pretty much told this toxic polluter, multinational corporation, the richest man in Taiwan, an outlaw polluter, they just pretty much is like, what do you want? And they were giving them their permits in record time. They were not having to do any federal, there's federal law. There's federal law. There's environmental federal law. And it's like, you don't have to do that. And they didn't. They were not having to do any of it. And all they wanted to do, it was the jobs, and that was it. It didn't matter that a bay system of fisheries was dying. It did not matter. And matter of fact, you think, well, there's bound to be some conscientiousness out there in the whole state of Texas. But it was like, no, the man that was running for president, and we got a lot of men from Texas that love to run for president. Well, we do. I don't know what's the problem we got down there. But this one was Phil Graham. He was running for president, and he was going to get all of the lion's share of credit for bringing Formosa down, which was bringing down 3,000 jobs, about 5,000 jobs to build it, $3,000 3,000 jobs to operate it, and he pretty much guaranteed that corporation, outlaw corporation, that they could get everything they wanted. And the reason why he could guarantee it was because his campaign manager, Phil Graham's campaign manager, was the head of the EPA. So you talk about, what are your credentials? It was like, well, I'm his campaign manager, and he appointed him. So he was pretty much rubber stamping the whole thing. And so basically, this is what fell in my lap. It fell in my lap. And it comes down to the point that it was so controversial with every politician on board, every city, county elected official was getting contracts with the new one, so everybody was making money. There was nobody that was opposing it. I was the only person. And the thing of it is they did not even believe I was who I said I was. They thought, surely there isn't any woman, fisherwoman, stupid enough to get out there and do that. So they actually figured I had to be a spy hired by the state of Louisiana to kick it out of Texas and send it back to Louisiana. That's how weird they got about it, because they really didn't think, what on earth is a shrimp woman doing? It was like, what on earth is her? She hadn't got enough sense to do that, and especially to hit it at such a critical point. And so basically I was by myself, totally. My family were horrified. My sister told me I needed counseling, serious counseling. My brother said that I was working for his fish house. He said he was worried that the place was going to get firebombed, and he was fixing to fire me. And my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, he was on the verge of divorcing me because the fishermen were going to him and saying, can't you control that woman of yours? And so he was getting real perturbed and real upset with me. So, but the bottom line is, it's like, it's your home. And it's like, do you give up your home just because every odd out there is opposed to you, all of it? And it's like, you either give up on your home and realize you can't fight it, or you do something else. And I remember when I decided, it was like I was drawing a line in the sand. It's like they were not going to get that bay. They were I had no idea what to do. I had none. zero. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have money. I didn't have a group. I had zero. And so I remember I had this real savvy activist. He came from Houston, and he was like, now, Diane, he said, you just need to pat yourself on the back and just say you did a good job. And I did. I like fought it for 2 years just doing the regular stuff. And I was like, and he said, it's just a done deal and it's a sweetheart deal. It's like, we know they do that in Texas, and this is what it is. And just say and know you did a good deal. And I'm like, they're not going to get that bag. And he said, you can't do anything. And I mean, right off the top of my head, I said, I'm going to do a hunger strike. And he got the biggest kick out of that. He said, people in Texas don't do hunger strikes. We don't do hunger strikes. Nah. You know, I mean, we might get a gun out, and we might get a tractor out and run a car through an office building or something like that, but we do not do hunger strikes. And I said, I'm going to do a hunger strike. And I did, and I just started convincing myself more and more. But the thing of it is, I know a little bit about human nature. And I knew if I took that idea about a hunger strike, if I took it home, if I slept on it, if I pulled a few of my friends together and say, what do you think about me doing a hunger strike? I would not have done that hunger strike. I would have woke up in the morning and saying, thank God I didn't do that hunger strike. And so what I immediately did is I went to the nearest phone, I called the only reporter, and I said, I'm doing a hunger strike. And she said, when? And I said, right now, I'm doing it. And I did. I didn't know the first thing about a hunger strike. I did not. I did not know how to do a hunger strike. I just figured you don't eat. I figured that's what you don't. And the thing of it is, you know, I now know after 10 hunger strikes that, you know, you have handlers and you have all types of little electrolytes and all kinds of little stuff you can do for, especially in this audience. I bet y'all really know how to do fast. I bet you do. I bet you do. I didn't know nothing. I just didn't eat. I didn't eat, and I just and I had a friend who gave me an empty milk jug full of water, and I decided I was going to do my hunger strike on the shrimp boat in the bay. And this was before cell phones. I didn't have a cell phone, and it's like that's when I realized you got to let people know you're on a hunger strike. I did not let nobody know. The only people that knew I was on a hunger strike was the corporation, and they would regularly, because the shrimp boat was tied at the docks, and so regularly, every morning, here come management from Formosa Plastics, and they would climb out, and they all had their black suits and their shiny black shoes, and they would get on the shrimp boat and look at me, and they said, just look at her. Just look how stupid she looks. And they said, Diane, you're shooting yourself in the foot on this one. You just best give this hunger strike up. And I'm like, nope, I'm going to do this hunger strike. And I mean, you cannot believe how aggravated they got about that hunger strike. And the thing of it was, they got so aggravated because they could not control it. It was a different type of energy. And of all the crowds I have ever spoken to, I know y'all know what I'm talking about. It's a different type of energy. And what I found out, I had no support, I had no money, I had very little publicity, and yet it was like this vortex of energy, and it started just moving stuff. And suddenly, I got exactly what I wanted on that hunger strike, and it blew me away. And I was like, what on earth just happened there? And it's like, I had no idea. I had never saw anything like that in my life, to just do this action where you put yourself right out there, and it just changes stuff. And I remember it's like the EPA, who had before were going to just give them everything, grant them, build your thing, just get it moving. They suddenly stopped it dead in its track and said they were going to have to go through all of the rigmarole of impact studies and all of this and hearings. And I mean, it stalled it for like 3 years. It was a major, yeah. But I remember it was like, and so the EPA totally changed, flipped totally around. And I remember they come down to our county, and I guess they were thinking there is just monumental opposition out there against this chemical company. And so they came down to my county. They found the biggest auditorium we had, and it was the Ag building. And then they proceeded to start folding out of these chairs. And I mean, they put out about 500 chairs, and I'm like, what are you putting out the chairs for? I did. I went up to them and I said, why are you putting out the chairs? And they're like, oh, all the people opposing this. And I'm like, there's only one opposition here. and the thing of it is that's the beauty of the whole thing, is that it not only creates this change, but it gives this illusion of power and strength and opposition out there. And that's when I realized I was onto something. It was like a key to the universe. And it was something Gandhi said. I might be, because I know there's a lot of people very well versed on Gandhi, so I won't try to quote him exact, make a mistake here. But I know he said something like, anybody could do what he did given the level of commitment and the level of belief. And the thing of it is we so misunderstand what commitment is. We think nowadays, commitment is maybe it's a weekend doing something, maybe it's giving $50 to Greenpeace, and if you give them $100, it's real commitment. And and then you get real upset if maybe you do something for maybe 2 months, for maybe every 2 weeks you do something for 2 months, and if you don't get what you want, you just get real aggravated, and it's like, what in the Sam Hill is going on? I'm just going to give this up because nothing is changing. And the thing of it is we do not understand what commitment is about. I think it's one of the Berrigan brothers, one of the priests during the Vietnam War, and he made a really interesting statement, because he said, there is no peace because there's no peacemakers. And you look around and you're like, say, oh yeah, there's a lot of peacemakers. And like, no, because to be the true peacemakers, you have to go to those places that is equally disrupted, that can cause you to go to jail, that can cause you harm, that could possibly cause you to lose a job. Just like when we send and I know I harp on this one I really, really harp on, is because we will send our children, our 18-year-old girls and boys, off to the war, fully committed, and you can bet you if we don't outright kill them, or if we don't take off their arms, you will send them back crippled in their mind the rest of their life. And I know what I'm talking about. I was a medic during the Vietnam War. My ex-husband is 100% PSD. Just totally messed up in their minds. And it's like, this country just salutes and sends them off to these wars. That's 100% commitment. And what do we do when it comes to protecting our home, protecting our everything we value? It's like, oh no, I definitely do not want to go to jail. I don't want to spend a day in jail, or maybe 2 hours, and I will $100 fine, that's at the most. And we don't want to put our jobs at risk. We don't want to put our money at risk. We don't want to put our name at risk. And we definitely do not want to put ourselves in harm's way. And I have found out that when you put yourself out there, when you put yourself out there on the edge, at risk, you are somehow tuning in to a universal secret, and is that you can create change. And that's what I stumbled upon. I stumbled upon that. And I also realized that when you do these almost very spontaneous things from the heart, and Gandhi called that soul power, because it is a power that is totally different from your head, from a linear, rational thought. It's totally different. And matter of fact, I am probably the only activist, environmentalist, peace activist, jail advocate that has never had a plan in my entire life. I do not do that. And I know when I go to I go to these environmental conferences, and you know, you got Greenpeace and Sierra Club and all the different groups out there, and they know what I'm fixing to say, and they're like, oh my God, there she's going to say the thing about the no plan again. But the thing of it is, it's this, you know, our culture so distrusts the heart, the intuition. We call it daydreaming, we call it drifting off in the head. We think of every name in the world to disown it, and yet that is the heart energy. That's where the inspiration rises, and that's, you take that and you put intention on it, and you will create. You will create, and that's what I have been doing for the last 21 years now. And I know with, thank you. And I know with Formosa Plastics, I was trying to keep them from killing the bay. That's what I was doing. And you know, it's real funny that activists will tell you when you talk about why you do things, you are never, never, never to say you do it for the bay or you do it for the animals, because we know the only ones really with consciousness are human beings, and so please don't say anything real funny out there and talk about the bay being alive. And the thing of it is what gets me is that we, you know, especially environmentalists, they really just talk and talk and talk about how they love nature and how they got to protect it, and you know, and they even got the Gaia theory where it's alive, but they never, ever, ever do actions where they trust that energy out there to work with them. I mean, they got everything so pat, so planned, so linear that there is never a niche where the universe can work at all. And so I'm just a real big believer, yeah. It's because you can make the universe an ally. And I know another one I love to make an ally with and just scare the heebie-jeebies out of people is, like I say, I love to make death an ally. It's like I have been out in the bay so many times and nearly sank, but I have, I guess because I'm a little bit of a mystic, and I believe there's more out there than is what is visible. You know, my grandfather was a Cherokee Indian, and he pretty much talked to the dolphins. And on the other side of my family, they were holy rollers, and they believed in the devil, very real. And you know, and it was, so there was a level of the unseen world that was out there. And so I just believe that there is all of this energy, and there is a willingness to become an ally with it. And through my 22 years, that is what I have trusted. When I do an action, I don't have to have the plan, I don't have to have the money, I don't have to have the support. If I feel it's from my heart, I put intention into it and to move into it. That's how Code Pink got started. That's how the Injured Workers got started. That's how the Texas Jail Project got started. And it's like everything that I have ever did is to trust and value that. And if that is only one thing, and I know it's very sympathetic crowd, because I know you already know. I think of any crowd I've ever spoken to, you already know that. But it has guided every step and every action I have ever did. And I know to talk about to show how it really can materialize. When to get Formosa to do zero discharge, I did 3 different hunger strikes, and they were I think the first one was 2 weeks, and I got what I wanted, and the other 2 were 30 days hunger strikes. And at one point, I had Formosa. You know how it is when you say you give a monkey a typewriter, and if he types enough, he's going to type a sentence. Well, I was kind of like that. At one point, I totally lost. I had a lawyer that worked for me pro bono, and he stopped working for me and started working for the company. So I was like totally by myself. And I was just filing these appeals and filing these lawsuits. And I'm not a lawyer, and I have no legal aid information. But I was I was throwing the whole thing out there, and I was just typing up a storm. And somehow I managed, I don't know how I did it, but I managed to stop Formosa's permit. And so here you got a $3 billion plant. You have 2,000 workers ready. They've got their apartments. You got the contracts. You got the product. And they are stopped dead in their tracks. And I managed to do that. Yeah. I have no idea how I did it. But anyway, so the thing of it is like, when I do anything like that, like I don't trust it. But it was like I had an appeal with the EPA, federal government, federal law, straight and narrow, CFRs, the whole bit. And I'm like, still didn't trust it. And so I called up the EPA. I was talking to the lawyer, and I said, now, how's that appeal doing? And she's like, oh, and see, my name is Diane. And Formosa's lawyer's name was Diane. And she thought she was talking to Formosa's lawyer. Yeah. And come to find out, the law don't mean anything. People, I hate to tell you this, the law does not mean a flip. When you got a lot of money, they can pretty much get what they want to get. And I found that out. So it was like, and the EPA was like, oh yeah, we're just wondering how the discharge is doing. And it's like, are you having problems with the chromate? Because we're really worried about the chromate, you're putting out there. And she kept talking. And then I realized she thought she was talking about Formosa's lawyer. And Formosa was already discharging. They didn't have a permit. They didn't have an appeal. We hadn't heard from the judge. They were just doing it. The EPA knew it. The State Environmental Agency knew it. The only one who didn't know it was little stupid me, who was sitting there believing they were all going to play by the rules. No, they don't. And so I was outraged. I was outraged. It was like, I am so sick and tired of the small people having to abide by the laws. I guarantee you drive down the state of Texas without a driver's license, without a insurance, they're going to send you straight to jail. We just dearly love to send people, little people down to jail in Texas. But I guarantee you, if you got enough money, you can get away with murder. And they do it all the time down there. And I was just fed up with it. And I was like, and I wasn't looking to do an action to try to stop something. I was just outraged. I was outraged. And so I thought of the thing that what could be, like sometimes when people get so much bad news that it doesn't even affect them anymore. You just hear it and you hear it and you hear it, and pretty soon you go numb and you don't hear it anymore. It's like you got this glass all over you. And so I thought, what could I do that would be like a hammer that would just bust this glass and it would just shatter and it would just make people just, it's like, what's going on? And so I said, I need to sink something. I really need to sink something out there. And to be quite frank with you, I thought about sinking a barge out there. But I was like, no, I need to keep this. because the only thing I had going for me was the integrity, my own integrity. So I knew if I had to sink anything, it had to be my own boat. You know, and this is like a farmer. This is like Francis burning his farm. Or burning his cows, or killing his cows, killing his cows. And I did. I was gonna sink my shrimp boat, the CB. And so that's what I did. I removed the diesel engine in it because I knew if I sunk the boat with the diesel engine, the story would be, look at that woman polluting. You know, and here you could have a chemical company putting 17 million gallons a day of toxic waste into a bay, and they would say, look at that woman putting that diesel fuel out there in that bay. That's what they would say. So I removed the engine. I connived a shrimper into pulling me in the dead of night out into the middle of the bay, and I was going to sink it right on top of Formosa's discharge. And lo and behold, naturally, I had a cousin who was a shrimper spokesperson, and Formosa had hired him to be a consultant for $60,000 a year, and all he had to do was watch me and tell him what I was doing. And so he pretty much, my cousin, pretty much went and told the Coast Guard, that woman is fixing to sink her boat right out there on top of Formosa's discharge. And so by the time, it was like midnight, by the time I got out in the bay, and this crazy norther came in, so it was blowing, the seas, it was raining, and here come 3 boatloads of Coast Guard, and I mean these big carriers and a little roustabout, and they said I was a terrorist on the high seas, and they were going to give me 18 years in the federal penitentiary, and it was like, I did not care. I'm going to sink this boat. And the thing of it is, what was so interesting, and to tell you that you have to trust, is that up to this point, I didn't have a single shrimper. I mean, the shrimpers are the most depressed people on the face of the earth. They think it's their last days. They're seeing the last nails in their coffin. They do not believe you can fight City Hall. They just give up. Every time they saw me, they were like, please, Diane, just go away. I just want to go out in the bay and just get away from it. And those shrimpers, the most conservative, redneck shrimpers you're ever going to come across, they saw me out there in the bay with that Coast Guard all over me. I mean, I had Coast Guard. They had so many ropes on my boats trying to pull me to the docks that every one of those shrimpers got in their boats and headed out right to the Coast Guard and went right out in front of that chemical company that was located right on the base and started doing a demonstration. And I guarantee you, you do a demonstration out there in the bays, and that's a federal fine. And those guys did not care. And it was, never in my life could I have planned that. Never could I have planned that. It was the most spontaneous act I had ever saw. And it was that action. It was that action where I got 0 discharge. The company saw all of those shrimpers out there, and it was like, they realized they had lost it because I now had all the fishermen. And they said, what is it going to take to shut you up? And I said, I want you to recycle your entire waste stream. And so that's how I got 0 discharge from a major corporation. Yeah. 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 And you know, it's, I know people, when they think about it, they're like, well, yeah, Diane, but that took you how many years to do that? And I'm like, well, yeah, that took me 5 years at least to do that. But I always say, but you know what? It's like the next month I went to Alcoa Aluminum, and I didn't even call the plant manager up. I just showed up at his door, and I said, now, we going to do 0 discharge, or we going to do this other thing? And he gave me 0 discharge. That's how I got the second plant to do 0 discharge. Yeah. So I'm just telling you, folks, be very unreasonable, very unreasonable. I love to quote, it's a misquote of George Bernard Shaw, and the quote is, reasonable women adapt to the world, but unreasonable women make the world adapt to them. So we need to be very unreasonable, you women out there. Thank you, thank you.